Welcome in, Hokies fans, to this edition of the Tech Sideline Podcast. We record on Wednesday, May 4th, and we've got a packed show for you as both teams on the diamond are in the top 5 in the country. We've also got a lot to catch up on with basketball transfers in and out of the program, and also the NFL draft last week. 4 more Hokies heard their names called by the commissioner. We'll get to all of that and much more on episode 237 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, which starts right now. We welcome you into episode 237 of the Tech Sideline Podcast, however you are listening, whether that's archived on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, or Stitcher, or if you are on our YouTube channel. If you are, we ask you to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Hit the bell so you know when the Tech Sideline Podcast goes live every single week. Also, if you are in our live YouTube chat, make sure to drop a comment or question for Chris, David, or Will. We'll get to those towards the end of the show. Guys, we haven't been on the set in a while. We've got the crew on set. Will Stewart will be joining us later, founder and general manager. But to my right, Chris Coleman, lead analyst and columnist. Across the way, managing editor David Cunningham. Katie Adams making her return to the fourth chair today. As always, Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes. And I'm your host, Jake Lyman. Again, we've got a lot to get to. We've had a lot of guests on over the last few weeks. Great interviews. Tony Roby, Mike Lewis with the softball program, John Sheff last week. But we get to catch up on some stuff. And let's start with baseball. I think probably the most intriguing story of the weekend. They take 2 of 3 from Virginia for the first time since joining the ACC, now a top 5 team in the country. It seems like I'm kind of waiting for this team to slip up, and they just won't do it. They've won every ACC series.
You're waiting for it because they slipped up last year.
Yes.
And slight correction, Tech has swept UVA before. But
in
that was in
Charlottesville.
Blacksburg. But yes,
in
it was their
Charlottesville.
first series win in Charlottesville, which is very impressive. And one of the reasons Tech is ranked so high in the RPI, they're up to 5th now, is because most of these series have been on the road. They keep winning on the road. And so I think their last, 10 games are going to be at home.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they won't be as big of an RPI boost, but it gives them a chance to close strong. I want to say Tech has what is Tech's record at home this year? I think they've only lost 4 games at home.
Yeah,
or something like that.
It's really, really good.
Yeah.
But I mean, you got to think they only played 1 of 3 games again. You know, the Notre Dame series got snowed out, but they beat Notre Dame. They took 2 of 3 at North Carolina and at North Carolina State. That's 5 ranked wins, and that doesn't even count the UVA 2 wins at UVA,
right?
And then you beat Miami on your own turf.
I mean, the win at Liberty was a good RPI win. Also,
that too, you know, and not to mention like beating JMU, you know, here is a pretty good win too. So, I feel the same way, Jake. I've kind of felt like, you know, last year, okay, they're gonna slip up. And they just haven't.
There's just so many good hitters on that team.
Yeah.
You got 3 guys ranked in MLB.com's top 150 prospects.
Yep.
So there's a good chance Tech is going to have 3 players go in the first 5 rounds of the draft in July.
Yeah.
Gavin Cross seems like he's going to be a consensus top 15 pick, maybe sneak into the top 10 possibly. I think he's number 11 on that MLB list. So there's just a lot of batting talent on that team. And the first 2 pitchers, the top 2 pitchers have been really good. I know Hackenberg took his first loss on Saturday. That's a good thing. Get it out of your system before the NCAA tournament. I remember the last.
But he's a true freshman who went essentially.
No,
He went 8-0.
I mean, he kept going and going and going.
I'm comparing it to Joe Manaply, who is in the majors right now. He was Tech's number 1 starter the last year Tech hosted the NCAA tournament 2013, and he was unbeaten going into the NCAA tournament. Tech is hosting the number 1 seed, so that Friday night they get the number 4 seed, which I believe was UConn. And sure enough, Joe Manaply had his first loss of the year in the NCAA tournament, and in front of the biggest baseball crowd at that point in Tech history.
Yeah,
wow. So all I'm saying, I was not that I wanted to lose the game, but I felt like Hackenberg, things were coming a little too easy for him, and I think he needed to have a bad night before the NCAA tournament. Get it out of your system.
Yeah, well, in Game 3, you know, the Sunday starter has been, I don't want to say up in the air. I mean, we had John Sheff on last week, and he kind of said, yeah, like Jordan Geber's kind of sliding in and kind of making that role his. But the Sunday starters, Gieber wasn't bad. He wasn't great. He just gave up some. UVA just kept hitting.
Well, he only went one inning, which and not great from your Sunday starter.
But then Henry Weicker comes in and kind of takes over the game. And the fact that Virginia Tech has this stability, because you think back to it like last year, Virginia Tech probably. You win game 1, and then Virginia Tech probably would have lost that game 3. And just the consistent hitting, I think getting hits, and this is the name of baseball, but like getting hits when you need them. I mean, Virginia Tech's been so good at that this season, and it's not just Gavin Cross, it's not just Tanner Schobel, not just Nick Biddison, it's everybody. I mean, you can pretty much plug everyone into the lineup, and I think that goes to show the development, especially of all the young guys, because there were so many guys that were essentially 8 of the 9 guys were freshmen last year. Yep. Freshmen, either true freshmen or COVID freshmen. Now everybody's got another year under their belt, and you've seen the development. And Gavin Cross isn't always doing Gavin Cross things, but when Tanner Schobel, when Nick Biddison, Carson DiMartini, Eduardo Malinowski, I mean, you've got a long list of guys that can pretty much step up to the plate anytime and get you something.
And you saw that on Friday. You talk about the middle of this order has been the part that's been producing Cade Hunter, Tanner Schobel, Gavin Cross, Jack Hurley. But it was Nick Biddison with the home run, Carson DiMartini with the home run on Friday to back up Griffin Green against Nate Savino for Virginia. And the Hokies have won every single Friday game since that Georgia Tech series in ACC play. Griffin Green 7-1 now. You mentioned those 2 starters. You've got Green 7-1, Hackenberg 8-1. It's going to be tough to beat the Hokies with those 2 guys on the mound over the next few weeks.
What we haven't talked about this year enough is defense. We've talked about how good the hitting is and the improved pitching, but maybe the pitching is improved because the defense is so much better. I think that's a big reason for it. The Tech did not commit a single error in that 3-game series. And, I watched the Friday night game, and the defense saved several runs in that Friday night game. I mean, Green had a great line, but if the defense had been last year's standards or the previous year's standards, and he would have given up 4 or 5
You're
runs
losing
in that game.
those games.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I think Tech is top 10 in fielding percentage, but I think I also feel like they have a little more range and playmaking ability, particularly with Schobel at shortstop. I mean, we saw him make a pro play on Sunday with that spin, but behind the second base bag. So I just think it's just overall a much more complete team.
Yeah, and I think Carson DiMartini at third, he's kind of stepped into that, not to go at Kevin Madden, but there were a lot of times last year where Kevin Madden was just inconsistent at third
defensively,
base.
very
defensively, yeah.
yes.
I mean, just like ball comes right to him, and he just can't make the routine throw to first. And you haven't really, I think across the board, you haven't really seen much of that from Virginia Tech baseball at all this year. I mean, and moving Gavin Cross to center, from right, and kind of just shuffling everybody around. I mean, I thought it was really interesting when we had Chef on last week, and he's talking about how Nick Biddison, who's essentially played first for a lot of them this year, goes and plays right field, and he's like, that's some of the best right field I've ever seen. And Gavin Cross is playing some of the best center field he's ever seen. And there's just so much, I guess, guys can slide around, and there's flexibility there. And if you need a guy like Jack Hurley's playing left field, but he played center field last year, and the guys have, everybody in the outfield kind of has, like, I think, like Chef said, center field speed, where everybody can kind of track down those balls, and you combine that with like a really good infield. And we've even seen it from a guy like Nick Halisa coming in. There's no drop off when he comes in at first base. I think overall, that the fielding has kind of elevated the pitching staff.
And Coach Chef talked about first base specifically when we asked him about defense last week. He said, the first baseman's job is to make the rest of the infield better. If they make a bad throw, you can scoop it, you can get it. And apparently Nick Holisa has been about as good as Coach Chef could have asked for this year. Let's talk about that Sunday victory. I talked about waiting for the Hokies to kind of have their letdown and lose a series. And the Hokies go down 4-0 against a top 15 team in Virginia on the road. I was ready to turn the channel and just say, okay, there it is. They lost the series. And they battled all the way back. We mentioned Gieber only went 1 inning. Weicker and Fireved come in, 8 innings in relief, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts. And the bats came to play. Gavin Cross, triple shy of the cycle. That I think that shows the grittiness of this team. You go down 4-0 on the road to your rival top 15 team, and you come all the way back and get a huge win.
That game reminded me of Game 4 of the World Series that I was at this past year, when the Braves had a bullpen game, as they did a couple times during the World Series. But the guy they started in Game 4 did not exactly get off to a great start. He lasted 2/3 of an inning, and the bases were loaded, so they had to bring in Kyle Wright. And Kyle Wright gets the out, and then he presumes to pitch like 5 innings of 1-run ball. And the Braves won the game. And that's kind of what that Sunday game reminded me of. Quite frankly, it's kind of what Sunday games have to be for Virginia Tech. They are the bullpen game.
Yeah.
It was actually good to win a Sunday game, because generally speaking, the trend had been you win on Friday, you win on Saturday.
And then the Sunday game doesn't really
you lose.
matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And
You take the first two.
And you're sitting there thinking, oh, man, I wish we had a definite third starter or we'd be getting some sweeps here. But so it was good to show that you can win a Sunday game.
Yeah.
And because you can't just depend on those number 1 and number 2 starters, particularly when you hit the postseason, because you're going to be facing a lot of teams that can hit the baseball. If one of those guys has an off night, you're going to need that bullpen game to come up with a victory for you.
Yeah, and I think kind of what you mentioned, 1-run ball, UVA scored 4 runs in the first 2 innings and then only scored once the rest of the game, and that was a homer. Tech pretty much shut them out the rest of the game, and that
they're like right. UVA and Tech are both like top 5 in batting average in the country, right? So you're talking about a really good hitting lineup.
Yeah, and Tech's down 4-0 after 2 innings, and everybody's sitting there going, "What the heck's going on?" And then Virginia Tech proceeded to score 7 unanswered. And then they did give up that 1 home run, but like that is really impressive to do, and especially when it's not necessarily your Friday starter, your Saturday starter. It's your bullpen game. That just kind of again goes to show that, like, I think that's kind of a confidence boost for everybody. I mean, just in the organization, everybody with the program. Just all right. If we do get to a Sunday game where we need everybody to step up, well, we know how good our bats are going to be. But if I'm John Sheff, I feel a bit more comfortable now knowing that my Sunday guys, whoever it is, can come in and get us a win if we need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to point out that UVA had only lost 2 home games all year before that series. Now they've lost 4. So 50% of their home losses this year have come to Virginia Tech.
And it's a bullpen game on Sunday. Henry Weicker, Graham Fireved, you have to feel like if you combine 3 or 4 guys out of that bullpen on Sunday, you can get wins, and they've done it back-to-back weekends. Took Sunday's game against Boston College last week, then take Sunday on the road against Virginia. Before we move past the Cavaliers, I rarely get to say my claim to fame. I might have told you this before. Don't think I brought it up on the podcast. Friday starter for Virginia, Nate Cville, played in my district in high school. He was a sophomore when I was a senior, and big lefty, throws 93, and I step up. He sees my 5'11", 150-pound frame.
He's trembling.
And he walks me. Yeah,
Walked you.
he walks
There
me.
you go.
He sees me walk up there and says, "Can't throw this guy anything." You can hit."
Well, at least he didn't hit you.
No, yes, that was my fear. I only had like 4 career varsity hits, so I knew I wasn't going to get a hit off him.
But you
so
got on base.
best case scenario.
Got on base. That's
yes,
important.
Yes. So there we go. My claim.
Did
to
you guys
fame.
win the game?
Nope. I made 2 errors in left field or right field and lost the game.
Our first ever TSL baseball writer back in the day actually faced off against Matt Harvey one time in high school. Yeah, he struck out and walked.
There you
I
go.
was like, well, you got on base.
You got on base.
Every time you see Matt Harvey play, you can tell people that guy walked me one time.
Yeah. So if Nate Cville ever makes the MLB,
You say
I
that
can
guy
say
walked me.
that
in
guy
high
was
school.
scared.
that guy saw me coming. It wasn't a 4-pitch walk, but I'll say it was. I'll say he threw 4 pitches outside the zone. He didn't want me touching it. Well, just 2 ACC series left for Virginia Tech. A tough one coming up in a few weekends. They get off from the ACC this weekend with Villanova. Next weekend, Louisville. They're leading the Atlantic right now, 14-7 in the ACC, 31-12 overall. That's one of those series that you feel like could make or break the difference between being a top 8 seed in the NCAA tournament and being outside, where if you do get past the regionals, you might have to head on the road for the super regionals.
So it's a distinct possibility that it's basically a done deal for softball that they're going to host a regional and
Yes.
a super regional. Baseball has that chance too. You know, they're good in the RPI, and if they close strong, they will have a chance where they could potentially play two.
But this is a series you have to win.
Right? Yeah, like Louisville's a good team. Get yourself some more quality wins.
Yeah.
And you know, if you can finish it off down the stretch, something like 8-2. You know, 7-3, something like that, then I think you put yourself in a pretty good position.
Yeah, well, and I think the good news is for Virginia Tech, you're sitting there thinking, I don't have to. Of course, exams, you know, start this week, and so that's why it's a short schedule with Villanova,
Yes.
only a 2-game series. But you don't have to travel at all.
Right.
Like you get to sit at home and relax, and you don't have to go on a bus. You did all your traveling already. You've got Liberty midweek next week. Then you've got a 3-game series. So you got another chance for a quality win against Liberty.
Yes.
And you got a 3-game series against Louisville, another really quality opponent. Then Kansas State comes to town, and then you got Duke. It's not necessarily a crazy difficult schedule, but it's not an easy one either. And I think if Tech can continue to show that, continue to get a Sunday win, you know, to continue to show I guess kind of work out the kinks a little bit, because you want to kind of be playing your best baseball come the ACC tournament. You know, I think that's a chance to show it. And that Louisville series, I mean, it's probably going to be the, you know, one of the bigger series Virginia Tech's played in the season, which is kind of crazy to think about. But like, you know, it'll only be the second ranked series Virginia Tech's played at home this year. Miami would be the other one.
NC State was at home too.
Oh, NC State was at home. Okay, so the third ranked series, but Tech's played on the road so much. You know, this is, I think, a really good chance for the Hokies to kind of boost their resume just a little bit more.
And you mentioned classes end today, exams over the next week, so a little bit of a lighter schedule for baseball. But after that, all these guys have to focus on the rest of the way is baseball, trying to get to the regionals, super regionals, and hopefully the College World Series. Do we think this is a Hokies team that can make that happen? Obviously a surprise that we've seen them have so much success this year. I don't think anybody thought this would be a top 5 team at any point in the year. Does this team have what it takes to make a deep postseason run?
I would feel more comfortable if they had a third starter. The last time Virginia Tech hosted, they actually had 4 good starters who went on to have professional careers, and obviously, you know, Mansupply was one of them, and he made the majors. That was a very, very good staff. They were a good hitting team, but they were not an elite hitting team like this one. I think this team is a better defensive team also than that one. So like I said, I would feel more comfortable if they had a third starter, but I think if their bats stay hot, I mean, they can beat anybody. So I definitely feel pretty good about them getting past that first weekend. And, you know, we'll see about super regionals. You know, it's kind of like talking about the bubble for the NCAA tournament. Like, you get the question every week on the podcast, right? What does Virginia Tech have to do to make the NCAA tournament? And it's just like, I don't know. What does everybody else get? It depends on what other teams do too, you know? So that's the same thing for baseball. Whether Tech could be a top 8 and host a super regional is kind of dependent on other teams as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's going to, I think it's going to come down to who Tech ends up getting matched up with. Because if you get matched up with a team that like is also like kind of like a very similar team to Virginia Tech, a really, really good hitting team with all right pitching, you know, versus a team that maybe isn't as good hitting wise, but has really good pitching. You know, like I think in that situation, Virginia Tech would have the advantage. You know, you just got to get some hits and have your pitchers, you know, do their thing, and you're good. The problem is if you run into teams that can also hit as well. Like obviously you're not going to be able, you're not going to be running into a Tennessee team, but you might be in the supers.
Yes.
You know, so, like you're not going to be running into them in the regionals, obviously, but. I don't know. I after Sunday, I feel a little bit better after Sunday, just because you can't, like, that's 2 weeks in a row now where the Sunday game has been won by a group collective effort, and that's good. But you need to keep doing that, and you need to keep building up that confidence. You know, maybe Jordan Gieber's not the guy, but you've got to find somebody, and I think that could end up dooming Tech in the end, not having a Sunday starter. But the good news is that there aren't many teams in the country that can hit as well as Tech. You know, and that's kind of, I mean, we saw it on Sunday. You know, like in a Sunday game, you're pitching, you know, a bullpen game, you're down 4-0, and you know Gavin crosses 4 for 5, and you know the rest of the lineup just kind of gets hits when you need it. I think I think this team has it in them, but it's kind of come down to the matchup.
Yeah, and I think they've proven they can beat good teams. They've beaten a bunch of NCAA tournament teams already, so you've got to feel good from that standpoint. I think the great equalizer is defense, and the fact that their defense is so much better this year. You've got a professional at shortstop.
Yeah,
and he might not be a pro shortstop. He might be a pro second baseman, but still, he's a pro defender in a very good
in
one.
Schobel.
Right, and Schobel. And then you've got 3 outfielders that will play professional baseball. So I just think, and you've got a catcher who's going to play professional baseball, and so much improved at third base this year defensively. So I just think defense is better across the board, and
that could be the difference.
That certainly gives the pitching staff a lift, in my opinion.
And I think Will tweeted out, it was a quote posted on the message boards today from a D1 baseball article about Virginia Tech talking about their defense up the middle. You've got Cade Hunter at catcher, who's been phenomenal this year. You mentioned Tanner Schobel, a professional infielder at shortstop. Eduardo Malinowski's been great at second base too. And then Gavin Cross in center. If you have good defense up the middle, you're going to feel pretty good about your defense as a whole.
I mean, Gavin Cross throwing out that guy at the plate in the UVA game on Saturday, I believe it was. Yeah, that was impressive. And I was reading a little bit about him. He doesn't project as a center fielder professionally. He's a corner outfielder. Maybe a right. I was always assuming left field, but maybe after seeing that throw, maybe right field.
Yeah, I mean, he played right field up
forward.
until this year, but yeah, I mean, I think there's, like Chris said, there's so much talent on this team.
Yep.
It's hard not to feel good about them. I think, in all honesty, it's going to come down to what kind of team Tech ends up getting in the Supers, because you would assume Tech can, especially playing at home, Tech should be able to, get through the regionals, not with ease, but they're good enough to do that. Right. I think this Tech team could potentially win the ACC. I mean, that also, you're playing multiple games in multiple days, and that's when you need your pitching staff to come up big.
And that's the reason the 2013 team, the reason they hosted, I think they were like the 15th seed out of 16. The reason they hosted is because they got into the ACC tournament and made a run to the ACC finals.
Yeah.
Lost to North Carolina, but they made that run because they had 4 quality starters.
Yeah.
So a tournament style like the ACC tournament might be a little bit difficult for this Virginia Tech team. We'll see.
Yeah, because you got to get out of your pod.
Yes.
You've got, and so you could throw Griffin Green and Drew Hackenberg 1-2. Okay, you get 2 wins.
Now what?
The third day, okay, it's a bullpen game in the semis against one of the better teams.
Miami, Virginia,
yeah,
exactly. So on and so forth. So going to be tough, but right now Virginia Tech, they are the highest ranked team in the ACC.
They are.
And the game tonight against Marshall has been canceled. That game was in West Virginia, not going to be played. So a lot of home games coming up for this team. If you're in the area, head on out. Villanova this weekend, I believe, is Saturday and Sunday
I believe
games.
so, yeah.
And then after that, Louisville and Duke with some midweeks in between. So a lot of fun there with Virginia Tech, and hopefully more home games after that with regionals and super regionals. Let's move on. We haven't been able to talk about basketball in weeks, and a lot has happened. We haven't talked about any of the transfers out or the transfers in, so let's dive into that. Obviously, a lot of attrition out of the program. Naheem Aline has moved on. He will play at UConn now. John Ogiaco, David Gasson, Jalen Haynes, also all in the portal. Am I missing anybody there?
No, and Haynes committed to East Tennessee State.
Yes, Haynes at ETSU. And then also, if we're talking about players going out, Keve Aluma has decided to sign an agent and go into the NBA draft, so he won't be coming back as well. So those are 5 pretty key pieces for Virginia Tech.
And Storm Murphy graduated.
Yes, Storm Murphy graduating. So there's 6 players out. John Camden has come in. He's the first official transfer in from Memphis. He was recruited to Virginia Tech out of high school, ended up going to Penny Hardaway, but now comes back to Blacksburg. What are we thinking right now about the way this roster is constructed? Obviously, you would assume there's got to be some more moves in the front court, but Camden, a good piece to add to start off the transfers in.
Certainly an NCAA tournament caliber backcourt.
Yes.
A lot of unknown in the front court. I like Camden, but what you have to, I think he's a great fit for the system. I mean, Tech recruited him hard out of high school. To me, it's like, how much did that injury set him back? He played in 1 game for Memphis for 2 minutes before he got hurt and then sat out the rest of the season. So how rusty is he going to be? How good is he anyway? He's a transfer,
Yes.
but we haven't seen him against college competition.
Yeah, and is he immediate impact? Is he going to be able to make an immediate impact, or is it going to take him a little bit of time to get the rust off?
Is he a 4 or a 3? Generally speaking, I look at him as 6'8". In college, you're probably a 4. But you know,
but he can shoot the ball.
He can shoot it. But you want your 4 in Virginia Tech system to also be able to shoot it. Does he start off as a 4 and eventually switch to a 3? Does he get in here and you find out, wow, he's got more lateral quickness than we thought he had, so he can definitely play the 3 full time? I don't know. So yeah, he's a piece. I could see him starting at power forward for Virginia Tech this year if Mutz doesn't come back. Or I could see him being a bench guy, kind of a swing role between the 3 and the 4, depending on the matchup. It's just there's a whole lot of unknown there, other than the fact that from a skill set standpoint, he's a good fit for Virginia Tech offensively, and his dad went to Virginia Tech also.
Yeah, I was gonna say he's gonna be a really good fit. The question is just when is he going to be able to kind of make his impact? Because think about this, you know, Virginia Tech right now has a really good incoming recruiting class. Not even counting the backcourt with Rodney Rice and MJ Collins, you got Patrick Wessler and Darren Buchanan coming in. But that's a lot of young talent in the front court now. A lot of young guys that I think I did the math. Lynn Kidd has played like 17. He has 17 career appearances, and
most of them were mop-up duty.
Yeah, 10 of them were this year, and 7 of them were last year for Clemson.
So think about this.
So there's just barely any experience there.
And for people thinking like Wessler, because he happens to be 7 feet tall, is going to come in and make a huge difference. Lynn Kidd was higher ranked than Wessler coming out of high school.
Yes.
And he's gonna be entering his 3rd year, and he just hasn't made an impact anywhere yet. Not that he can't. It just takes big guys longer to develop.
Yeah.
Look at Cville Aluma.
Yeah.
I mean, he wasn't like he couldn't score
4 years.
4 years exactly.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I think one of the things people don't realize about Mike Young's system is it's much more complex than a lot of the other systems around the country. So it takes guys longer to get adjusted. There's a reason why Darius Maddox didn't play a lot of minutes early in the season, because on both the offensive and defensive end, it takes some time to adjust. For guys coming into college, it probably takes a little bit longer. You think about a guy like John Camden, who he has a year under his belt. He didn't get to play for most of the year, but he did get to sit back and kind of adjust to college, so he knows what it's going to be like. But how quickly is he going to be able to adjust to Mike Young's system? I think that is a question, you know, kind of witnessing that firsthand last year we knew how good Darius Maddox was, but he was kind of still the 3rd piece in that wing trio because he still wasn't as sharp as the other 2 in that offense. I think that just learning the scheme is kind of going to play a role going forward.
And Chris mentioned the backcourt. NCAA tournament caliber, you would feel the starters, Padula, Maddox, Couture, you would assume. So even with Naheem Aline gone, you may even feel better about that trio with the possible growth you could see from Padula and Maddox heading into this year. Rice, Rodney Rice coming off the bench. MJ Collins could get some minutes there as well.
We'll see if Mike Young actually wants to add a true small forward through the transfer portal.
Yes.
Because unless you count Camden as a true small forward,
you don't.
There's not one on this team. And maybe if Tech was missing anything this past season, that was it. They didn't have a true small forward. So that could be a potential target from the portal. But I still feel like Tech's backcourt is going to be good. You might not recognize Padula. Now he got a haircut. He doesn't look like Sean Padula anymore.
Yeah, but there's so much talent there, and I think. Here's the other thing, and I kind of wrote this. I did a recruiting story yesterday. Even though Hunter Couture, he does have another year left if he wants, but right now he's a senior. He can come back next year. But even if he doesn't, between Padula, Rice, Maddox, and Collins, every single one of those guys has at least 2 years after this year, at least 2 years left. In the case for Rice and Collins, they've got 3. So there's a lot of time for growth, a lot of room for growth, and they're going to be in pretty good hands going forward for a while.
Well, in the front court is where we've talked about. You talked about the guys who may get some minutes there. Lynn Kidd, transfer from Clemson last year, didn't play a lot this year, but I guess you could say he's the most experienced of the remaining.
Yeah.
big
Okay.
men.
So if the season started tomorrow, he's your starting center.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right?
It's him and Camden.
Right.
With Buchanan and Wessler, true freshmen, coming off the bench.
Right. Now, it sounds like Grant Basili,
Yeah.
the JUCO, or not JUCO,
JUCO.
the grad transfer from
Wright State.
From Wright State. Sounds like he's coming to Virginia Tech.
Okay.
6'9", 225, 18 points, 8 rebounds per game, low 30s career 3-point shooter, 70-something% free throw shooter. Really skilled player. Probably the most like-for-like Aluma replacement that you could potentially find. You could play the 4 or the 5. So for me, like right now, if the season started tomorrow, Kidd starts at center, Basili starts at power forward.
Yeah.
That's probably what it
And
would
you can
be
and you
like.
have Camden coming off the bench.
Right, you could. I think now we'll see. Now Virginia Tech is not done. Now if Mutz comes back, then
you're
Basili
set.
is your starting center, and Mutz is your starting power forward. Right,
And you'd feel a lot better.
right.
But then you've got like a potential like ACC champs repeat.
Yeah.
Starting 5 at least.
Yes,
I mean that is
sure.
a starting 5. Like for sure you're going to the tournament. But I think a lot obviously hinges on Justin Mutz's decision. But to Chris's point, even if Basili does end up coming, Virginia Tech still has 2 scholarships remaining. That doesn't even count Mutz. If Mutz decides not to return, that's a 3rd scholarship.
Right.
So
And
there's plenty of room to
correct.
add.
And they're going to add another big man for sure.
Yeah.
I would expect him to be a power forward. Now, how you use the rest of those scholarships is up in the air. I would like to add a traditional small forward if possible. I think that would be good. I really like Basili. I think he's a great fit. I think he's as closest you could go out in the transfer portal and find to Aluma's skill set that you could potentially get.
They're the same height. Aluma's 10 pounds heavier. And I mean, I think his growth, we were talking about this a little bit before. Basili, he's going to become a better 3-point. If he does come here, he's going to become a better 3-point shooter because he's working with Mike Young and those guys.
And he's already a pretty good
one.
Right.
So he's going to be a better 3-point shooter probably than Cville Aluma was.
And he's got 2 years left if he chooses to use his COVID year.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
So how many scholarships are still at 3? And
There are
then
3
if Mutz
right
doesn't come back,
now.
it would be 4.
Yeah, and then Basili
would take one of those.
potentially
So-
subtract one.
Yeah.
So
still a lot of flexibility for
Yeah.
Mike Young this year. Where do you think that Tech could look? Are there guys that maybe have entered their name into the draft that would enter the transfer portal after if they decide to come back? Are there some guys at lower levels who could come in? Who do we think, or where do we think Virginia Tech could look to fill those scholarships?
I will.
David is our expert.
I'm
there.
pulling up. Yeah, I'm reading off. So essentially, I went through past couple days and I kind of just made a list of potential guys that Tech has reached out to. Besides Basili, I'm gonna butcher this name, but Osuni. He's from St. Bonaventure.
I was really hoping to sign Ali.
I know.
Yeah, from Akron.
Yeah.
He's from St. Bonaventure. He's 6'10". Morris Udeze from Wichita State. Oh God, a lot of these names are just really hard. Mael.
Come on, you're a soccer fan. You're used to
Mael
this.
Poteet from Rice. Mo Nee from, that probably butchered that name too, from Eastern Michigan, and Gabe Dorsey from Vanderbilt.
For those wondering, this is from an article. On
This
the
is from an
homepage.
article. You can go
look at these names yourself.
read the names yourself and try to pronounce
Yes.
them. But essentially, there are 6 names that I kind of put on there, and assuming Tech gets Basili, that cuts it down to 5. So you've got 5 guys kind of that Tech has been pursuing, and 4 of them are 6'8" or taller. There's one 6'8" guy, one 6'9" guy, 2 6'10" guys, and then Gabe Dorsey's a 6'6" kind of guard from Vanderbilt.
Well, that'd be your small forward.
But he 6'6", he'd be your 3.
On the wing. Yep.
But I think there are a lot of names, that are kind of in that mix. Like Udeze, from Wichita State, he listed his top 8 schools back on April 20th, and Tech's in that. Whether he comes and visits is completely different. Poteet is the kid from Rice, and he visited Pitt, and he told Pitt reporters that he was going to visit UMass and Virginia Tech. So it's tough because, remember, it's still May the 4th. There's plenty of time, to figure this out. But I think what is important to note is you're not gonna really get any high school kids at this point. It's all gonna be from the transfer portal. But there's plenty of names out there. It's kind of just finding the right guys that fit the system. And ideally, if you could find guys that have multiple years of eligibility left, where they could help this year, but they've got room to improve, I think that's pretty good too.
Mm-hmm. I think we need the Hokies to get. Is it Poteet and Moni? Can we get both of those guys? Just the 2-syllable names. I think that would be hilarious.
Poteet's his last name.
Okay. Poteet's
No. He has.
Okay.
His first name is. I'm gonna butcher it. It's Mylyjael.
Not even gonna try.
Yeah,
not even gonna make an effort.
But he's from North Carolina.
Okay.
He's 6'9" from Rice. But yeah, I think there's a lot of names. Everybody's kind of just sitting and it's playing the waiting game.
You're playing the waiting game a little bit, and let's not forget about Mutz. I don't think it's likely that he's coming back.
Yeah, but if he came back, that would be huge.
That would be awesome.
Yes.
And so if you're interested in contributing to the
NIL fund,
to the Justin Mutz NIL fund, I'm sure Mike Young would love to hear from you.
Justin Mutz, obviously, I think that would be the biggest move Tech can make, is just getting him back at this point, bringing a little more continuity to that lineup. We'll see if he comes back. June 1st is the day he has to decide by. So still a little under a month until we could get some clarity on the Justin Mutz situation. With that, I think it's about time to take a break. But first, let's send it over to Katie in the fourth chair.
So we touched on the men's basketball transfer. Got to touch on the women's basketball transfer. There's so much good coming out of Virginia Tech athletics as of late. It's hard to mention everything, but this is huge. David, correct me on the name if I'm wrong. Ashley Owusu?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, she's coming from Maryland, but she's a Virginia native, so that's great. She was labeled as the number 2 transfer in women's college basketball right now. So for a team that has so much potential already, I mean, this is huge.
I was actually at an NIL event on Sunday, and there was members of the men's and women's basketball team there. And I heard some people talking to the women's players about, y'all got a really big pickup today. And I'm like, what are they talking about? And I go through Twitter, and it hadn't been announced at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I wonder what they're talking about. And then later on, it came out.
That's what happens when you hang out with donors.
Right, exactly. Yeah. They already know.
But yeah, Ashley Wozo, former All-American, Drysdale winner, which goes to the best shooting guard in the country. She's essentially going to be a like-for-like replacement with Asia Shepherd, who, by the way, just made the Las Vegas Aces roster. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a huge pickup. Virginia Tech could be one of the favorites to win the ACC this year in women's hoops. You've got Georgia Amore in her 3rd season at point guard, ACC Player of the Year Elizabeth Kitley at power forward. I think Kenny Brooks, he still has, like Mike Young, a lot of scholarships available. He's got a lot of room, but they got Claire Ford too from Boston College, who adds a little bit more size to the front court. So yeah, but Owosu's a huge.
Yeah, they got a good high school class coming in too.
They do, yeah.
And I believe Kiana Traylor coming back too.
Traylor's coming back.
So if you run out a possible starting 5 of Georgia Amore, Ashley Owusu, Kiana Traylor,
don't forget Kayla
King. There's an embarrassment of riches for Kenny Brooks over there right now.
Yeah.
So they're definitely going to be good. ACC women's basketball is so hard to predict, though, because you're always going to have the Louisvilles and the NC States. UNC is going to be really good next year, and then you have Virginia Tech. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it'll be a really competitive conference next year. Swinging back to softball and baseball, it's hard to believe that they're both ranked in the top 5. It's even harder to believe that there's another school that has both their softball and baseball teams ranked in the top 5 in Arkansas. But last night, Arkansas baseball lost to Missouri State. And they play a tough series at Auburn this weekend, so maybe it'll be just Virginia Tech in that category once the new rankings come out. I'm not sure.
I've seen people have been averaging the baseball and softball rankings together.
Tech leaped an average.
Yeah.
Now like 3.5 is the average ranking between the two.
Yeah. So if you beat Villanova this weekend, who is it? Won those 2 games against Villanova. And then you're potentially move up to 4th or 3rd or something, depending on what other teams do.
And I believe we'll talk about softball in the second half. Softball's off this weekend, I believe.
Yeah, softball doesn't have anything until the ACC tournament.
The ACC tournament. So
which starts next Wednesday.
Yes.
You would assume Tech's not going anywhere from 2.
Well, I think I was talking with Chip Grubb. I think Tech's number 2 in the RPI, but Tech could potentially be number 1. That's how good Tech softball is. Yep. So
we'll talk more about them in the second half. Katie.
Quick football comment. I read this online and I thought this was so interesting. So last year in the 2021 NFL draft, the ACC had 51 players selected. This year, only 21 players. So you cut that number by 30. It goes to show just coastal chaos, Atlantic anarchy in a year that Pitt and Wake Forest are in the ACC championship game. What do you expect? But it's also like Virginia Tech led the conference, tied with UNC for the most number of draft picks. They leap over Clemson, so I don't know, just crazy.
Two picks.
2 picks.
Yeah.
Texas had none. What did Miami have? 1 late or something, or did they have none?
I think Miami had 1.
Yeah.
Pitt had 2, the ACC champions, and 1 was Kenny Pickett.
And Georgia had 16.
Georgia had 15.
15.
I actually looked at this last night. I was going to bring this up in the second half, but it fits now. So the ACC had 21 picks. Georgia and LSU combined had 25. And then in the Big Ten, Penn State, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio State combined for 24. It's an example of how certain rosters are getting stacked with the best players.
Yeah.
And I'm working on an article about 757 talent, specifically quarterback talent in the 757, and how, it's been 10 years, over 10 years. The last productive
prospect.
The last productive 757 quarterback at the Power 5 level was in the 2009 recruiting class.
Yeah.
And it used to be every other year a dominant quarterback would come out of there. So I interviewed all these people about it who were very familiar with the situation. Like I interviewed Jim Cavanaugh, I interviewed Lou Johnston, I interviewed Dwight Vick, and that article is going to run while I'm out of the country next week. But one of the things we talked about was one of the things that's happening in the 757 is the talent is now stacked at like 3 schools out there. Yeah. And they just steamroll everybody. Like Oscar Smith is beating teams by 60, and there's a running clock in the second half. I mean, even playoff games are like teams with like 4 wins are making the playoffs. I mean, there's no parity out there at all because of all the anybody can transfer wherever they want. So they're all going to the same teams. And like the lower level teams, like they can't keep coaches anymore because you think you're about to have a good team, and boom, your 3 best players transfer to Oscar Smith. Yeah. And so like last spring, there was like 7 or 8 coaches that just quit in the 757 because of all that stuff that's going on out there. So all the talent is getting stacked to the top 3 or 4 places, and everybody else is just like, screw it, it's not worth it. I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah. So you're seeing that at all levels of American sport as far as like high school and college go. In football, where the talent is just collecting at the top teams, and I just think it hurts the overall product. And I think there needs to be some rule changes to think about it. Like after another 20 years of this, and the sport just becomes watered down. I mean, you see the crowds in Lane Stadium slowly decreasing through time. Like, what if you feel like 8-4 is the best you can do at some point, which it might be. And the crowds are down in the 757 because of it, as far as their attendance at games goes. So I think we have to be really, really careful as a society with where our football is heading. Not the NFL, but at the college and high school level, because there's just not a lot of parity anymore. Anyway, sorry for that diversion.
Looking forward to that article next week. Brings up... we'll get into this later, but Jordan Addison, talk of Pitt and USC, another example of that possibly.
Isaiah Wong,
but he's staying now apparently.
Well, he sort of had to, because if he had left, that would have basically been
pay for play.
Of pay for play.
Well, and that's right. The Jordan Addison. Apparently, there's a significant NIL package waiting for him at USC with Lincoln Riley. Addison, Biletnikoff winner this year, possible top 10 pick next year. So definitely a lot to be sorted out with NIL. I was listening to Packer and Durham on the way here. Just 10 months since NIL came into play, and we're already dealing with all of this stuff. So it will be fun to look at over the next couple of years. Katie, anything else in the fourth chair?
I'm good.
All right. Well, a good tease for the second half. Talked a little softball and NFL draft there. Those are our 2 topics when we come back. I believe Will's going to come back on set. So we will talk, I believe, NFL draft first. We'll get into that. 4 new Hokies drafted into the NFL, a bunch new signed as undrafted free agents, and then the softball program wrapping up their regular season last night and getting ready for the ACC tournament. All of that coming up here on episode 237 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back on episode 237 of the Tech Sideline podcast. We spent the first half talking about the baseball team now in the top 5 and the basketball team, some transfers out, some moving in, trying to build a roster for next year. In the second half, we're going to look back at last week's NFL draft. 4 new Hokies drafted into the NFL, a bunch more signed as UDFAs. And we'll also look at the softball program. Another sweep this weekend. Same old business for Pete Demore's squad up there. A little bit of rotation on set. Will Stewart, founder and general manager, now across the way. David slides over to my right, our managing editor. Katie's still in the 4th chair. I'm your host, Jake Lyman. With that, let's get into the NFL draft last weekend. Not quite as exciting as last year when the Hokies had 2 first-round picks, but 4 players drafted. Before we get into that, I've got some trivia for you guys. I want to see, as a group, all 3 of you, can you name every Virginia Tech first-round pick in the program's history? There are 13 of them. Can we get all of them among the 3 of you?
I think we can.
Oh, how convenient that I'm scrolling through Wikipedia's list of Hokies drafted into the
Put your phone down. Put your phone down.
All right.
Well, can we? Let's start with the Edmonds brothers.
Okay, so
I
Edmonds
was going to say
brothers.
start with the recency. So
Okay.
Darisaw and Farley.
Farley last year.
And
So
then-
Farley
That's
went
4.
22nd to the Titans last year.
Yep.
Darisaw 23rd back-to-back to the Vikings. Edmonds brothers, Bills and Steelers in 2018. 16th for
Yes.
Tremaine, 28th for Terrell. So there you go. You got 4 of the 13. Some of these should be easy.
Michael Vick.
Michael Vick.
Michael Vick, Bruce Smith.
First overall to the Falcons 2001, Bruce Smith. First overall, Bills 1985.
Did Eugene Chung go in the first round?
Eugene Chung did. 13th overall to the Patriots in 1992.
One of the Fuller brothers, maybe.
Correct. Which one?
Kyle.
Kyle.
Yep,
Kyle, 14th
Bears.
To the
overall to
Bears?
the Bears, 2014.
Okay.
You're missing, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
There goes all the air out of the room. So people who are
Yeah,
one
Will,
of
you
the-
gotta carry
one of
this
these should be
conversation.
pretty. I feel like I might have missed you guys saying it because you guys should get this one.
Well, Jim Druckenmiller.
Well, Jim Druckenmiller, correct.
Oh,
49ers, 26, 1997. Again, one of the, so 2004, I'll give you the year.
2004. Kevin Jones.
Kevin Jones, correct. That wasn't the one I was thinking of, though. Kevin
were-
Jones, Lions, 30th
D'Angelo
overall.
Hall.
D'Angelo
Oh,
Hall, 8th
oh,
overall to the
yeah.
Falcons. You
So
are
how many we got left? 1?
3? Oh,
Two.
2.
2008 and 2012.
Was
Oh,
Brandon
wow.
Flowers a first round pick?
He was 3rd pick in the 2nd round.
Okay,
so
so
just
that was
outside.
close. 2008. Sean Glennon. Sean,
I'll give you some
I'm
positions.
laughing with you, not at you.
No.
Tackle and running back.
Tackle. Oh, Dwayne Brown.
Dwayne Brown, Texans, 26th.
And Ryan Williams.
No.
Darren
No.
Evans.
Nope.
David
Wilson?
David Wilson,
Wow.
32nd overall
he went to the Giants.
Giants.
Yeah, he was the last pick of the first round.
Yes, there you go. So
And
those are your
V Tizzle was super happy. He's a Giants fan.
yes. So there you go. Those are your 13 first-round picks in Virginia Tech history. None this year. It got started in the 5th round. James Mitchell, first pick from the Hokies this year, 177 to the Lions. You feel like Mitchell could be a steal of the draft there. The injury probably dropped him a few rounds. I was thinking he could be a day 2 pick heading into the season. I think there's a chance he could turn into a number 2 there for the Lions behind TJ Hawkinson.
Dude, James, first of all, James Mitchell's such a nice guy. I had a chance to sit down and write a feature on James back at the beginning of the season before his injury. And which I completely forget about because it was so long ago, and then he didn't get a chance to play.
You forget about the feature, you mean? Or
Yeah,
the
the feature, just because his season ended 2 weeks later, but he's got so much potential if he can get fully healthy. If he can, he's I don't want to say he's exact replica of Kyle Pitts, but he's got the athleticism and he can block guys. I think James can have a really good future in the NFL if he can stay healthy.
Second was Amari Barno, 6th round, 189 to the Panthers. Barno, it was funny. You look on day 2, 3rd round, he's Mel Kiper's number 1 available. After Malik Willis went, I think Barno was number 1, and he went on for 3 rounds, and he finally
His
went
name
to the
was there.
Panthers.
Yeah, I read. So I'm a Dolphins fan, so I get the emails about Dolphins articles from the Athletic, and one of the writers for the Athletic, the Dolphins didn't pick till late, like the 111th pick or something like that, 3rd or 4th round, whatever that winds up being. I think maybe early 4th.
First few picks of the 4th.
And one of their writers thought that the Dolphins, they clearly needed an edge guy. They thought he might pick Barno, and there's a big difference between that and where he eventually wound up going.
Yep, 189. Barno, though, again,
you see the tweet yesterday from the Panthers that he already signed his rookie contract?
really?
And he was the first rookie out of all of them to sign.
Yeah.
Well, Barno was one of those guys you just look at and say everything's there. He's big. He ran the fastest ever 40 at the combine for a defensive lineman. We'll see. Maybe a late round steal there for probably the hometown team of a lot of listeners, the Carolina Panthers.
Well, he's such a good athlete, and he had such. I thought last year, and you guys that are more dialed in this stuff, correct me if I'm wrong. He basically had a good first game against UNC.
Yeah.
And then, in my mind, didn't do a whole lot the entire rest of the
statistics,
season.
he didn't do a lot statistically.
But he did grade out well.
Yeah.
You're correct.
Yeah.
So where was I going with all that? And then there was that weird, awkward 1 minute thing that showed up on Twitter where he was talking to someone, and this was weeks ago. He was on a podcast or something on the radio somewhere, and he kind of got cornered a little bit, and he let it slip that he thought that some of his teammates had kind of mailed it in after a certain point. And I guess, so I mentioned all that. I throw it out there. To me, it's just part of the landscape of Amari Barno. He's such a physically talented individual. If he winds up in the right spot, it would not surprise me if he had a very productive NFL career. And you're sitting there 5 years from now going, he was good for us, but he wasn't that good.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of Tech players have been successful as later round picks. I mean, you look Cam Chancellor, one of the most notable ones, Tyrod Taylor as well. So
I think Cam's a great example because Cam got moved. We talk about Cam all the time. He got moved around so much in his career that it was a surprise that he was that good of an NFL player. And again, you guys follow the NFL closer than I do, but that whole Legion of Boom, is that what they call themselves?
Correct.
Was that really the first group of defensive backs that was that huge and that punishing that you guys...
I mean,
that I can remember.
That may be a little bit before your time.
That I can remember, yeah.
I mean, you got Richard Sherman, who was huge out of Stanford, and he was great. And a lot of those guys were late round picks. Sherman was a 5th round pick, I want to say. Chancellor was 5th or 6th. I don't know where Earl Thomas went, but yeah.
But that's a good example.
A good
of a guy
example
that went
there.
late and had a great NFL career.
3rd pick for the Hokies, Luke Tenuta, 6th round, 209 to the Buffalo Bills. So another pick to the Bills. It's funny, I played golf at Auburn Hills on Friday, and I saw him. I was like, dude, you could get drafted. Like, what are you doing out here? But yeah, so Luke Tenuta, 6th round to the Bills.
I think we were taking a little heat on the boards or on Twitter because we've been saying for years that Tenuta arrived here and the coaches thought he was a future NFL draft pick.
Yeah.
And the rounds were going on, and he wasn't, and people were bitching and saying, oh, he should have stayed another year, et cetera, and then he gets picked.
Yeah,
and
we were right.
Bills have been a good place for Hokies to go in the past, too. I mean, maybe not for...
I don't want to talk about that.
our resident Dolphins fan. Last pick, Lecitus Smith, another offensive lineman, went just 6 picks later to the Cardinals. So... Lecitus Smith out to the desert, 4 Hokies picked, tied for the most in the ACC.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy to think
So
about.
while you guys continue to talk, I'm going to scroll through the list and see, does anybody know off the top of their heads when the last time that many Hokies got picked? Because it's been last year.
Last year.
The 2021.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who the other picks were.
Farley, Darisaw,
Khalil Herbert.
Khalil
Herbert and Diablo.
Devon
Diablo.
Yeah.
Yes.
Then
Yeah.
there was one the year before that, none, 5. So, 4's pretty consistent.
Pretty good.
Except for that
And when you
outlier.
lead the ACC, I don't know if that just shows how good Tech is or how
20%
down
of
the
ACC draft
is.
picks this year came from Virginia Tech.
That was it Katie that gave the stat of 21 picks this year for the that
That
is-
Which
A
is
drop
down
off of
30.
30.
And
That is insane.
again, Georgia had 15. So
Yeah.
Georgia was 6 away from matching the entire conference. But again, Georgia, that's a different animal right
and
there.
it opens up a whole other discussion.
Yeah. But I was gonna say I think both of those offensive linemen, Tenuta and Smith, like those are good landing spots. Like both of the they don't necessarily have to like jump in and play right away. They can learn from some of the veterans in the room, and you got good quarterbacks. like you got Kyler Murray and Josh Allen. Like those are pretty good quarterbacks to be able to block for.
Yeah.
And I think both of them are really talented guys that with some NFL development can be really good.
And not saying either of them could be Wyatt Teller, but Wyatt Teller was a later round pick. He went to Buffalo as well. So maybe we see a kind of development like that with Tenuta or Smith over the next few years. Undrafted free agents. I believe the Hokies had 7 undrafted free agents.
A lot.
Yes. Raheem Blackshear also to the Bills. So Luke Tenuta has a roommate in Buffalo.
That doesn't even mention that Tim Settle and Tremaine Edmonds are both there already.
A lot of Hokies on Buffalo. Changa Hodge to the Cardinals as well. So a roommate for Lacita Smith too. There are a lot of repeats here. John Parker Romer and Oscar Shadley to the Saints. So you keep that dynamic duo together.
That would be cool.
Yeah.
Let's see, Brock Hoffman to the Browns, so he'll get to play
with Wyatt Teller.
With Wyatt Teller. Not sure Brock's going to be able to play, but if you get those two guys next to each other, what a mauling group you've got. Trey Turner to the Raiders, so he'll be out in Vegas. Jermaine Waller
with Diablo.
We're getting a lot of these connections here. Jermaine Waller to the Lions with James Mitchell. And Jordan Williams to the Miami Dolphins
with Isaiah Ford
all by himself. I don't think Isaiah's on the team.
He'll be on the team again at some point.
For the next 20 years, Isaiah Ford will be on and off the Dolphins roster.
Yeah, that's crazy. But yeah, I mean, again, I don't know how many of those guys are actually going to be able to stick, but like that's a good amount of guys that got NFL deals. I feel like that's more. I don't know. I couldn't tell you how many guys usually end up as undrafted free agents with the team.
Seems like more than usual.
But yeah, that's what the feeling is. But I mean, I think landing spots for all of them. I believe I think Turner was going to go to the Vikings and then he got traded or something, or there was a trade. The pick was traded.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Well, Oscar Shadley, not an undrafted free agent. He's a training camp tryout with the Saints, as is Tay Daly with the Cardinals. So those are all of the Hokies who are at least getting a shot in the NFL this year. So that adds up to 13 guys. So a pretty good number for
Not
Virginia
bad.
Tech this year.
I think part of me looks at it and goes, if they had 13 guys that are potentially going to be able to play in the NFL.
How did they just go?
Yeah. Well, a lot of these guys probably won't make rosters to start, at least with the first team that they're with. But, I mean, again, they cut down a lot. You go from 90 to 53 during training camp for the NFL. So a lot of guys going to find other homes, but hopefully a lot of those Hokies find some success in the NFL. That wraps it up on the draft. And now let's get to what everyone's been waiting for, the softball team, the number 2 team in the country. And the new RPI rankings just came out. They are now number 1 in the RPI this year. So Pete Demore's squad well on their way to hosting a regional, possibly a super regional. And this week, a big accomplishment. They clinched the regular season ACC title with their sweep of Boston College.
And Pete Demore said that the ACC regular season title matters to him more than the tournament title, because I think ACC championship is single elimination, so anything can happen.
Yeah,
and it did last year. It's interesting to follow ACC softball, and the schedules are so unbalanced. You know, if you look at Duke pretty much didn't have to play anybody this year. You know, in ACC softball. So not to take away from what Pete and the team did, 40-6.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah, when I was actually texting with Chip Grubb, our softball writer, this morning, and he mentioned he texted me that quote from Pete just about how impressive it is to do that with like 10 cancellations because of weather and stuff like that. And Chip said he's going to write a story over the next couple of days just about how Pete Demore knew, because of the ACC schedule rotation, that Tech was not going to not that Tech wasn't going to have a tough schedule, but it was going to be lighter than it could have been. And so he went out and just scheduled Alabama and scheduled all these tough teams in the non-conference. And Tech proved itself. And now Tech's sitting with number 1 RPI in the country. And, I mean, they don't have another game until the ACC tournament starts next week. But it's just really impressive to do what they did. I mean, they took 2 of 3 from Florida State.
Should have been 3 of 3.
Lost. Could have been 3 of 3 at home against Virginia. Lost that one. I mean, very, very few slip ups, and when you play as many games as they do, that's really impressive.
Yeah, 40-6, and this close to being like literally 40-3 that I can think of right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Win the game at Florida State without the illegal pitch call stuff going on.
You maybe steal one from Alabama if you can just score one run.
I'm thinking both against Alabama. Weren't they 2-0 and 1-0?
Yeah, 3-0 combined score.
And the bats just weren't working
Yeah.
yet, and really good team. Just it's one of those deals where I look at it, guys, and it just doesn't register
how good they are.
And I'm in this weird place, and I've almost tweeted this a couple of times, where every time the baseball team steps on the field and every time the softball team steps on the field, I expect them to win. And that's irrational and unreasonable, but that's how good they've been.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of baseball, David just showed me a tweet from our Chris Hirons, baseball beat reporter. D1 Baseball has the Hokies in their newest bracketology as the 3 seed overall in the NCAA tournament. So I guess if you look at the brackets overall right now, both Hokies, Diamond Sports would be top 3 seeds overall in the NCAA tournament.
Which is absurd.
Which I guess that's the equivalent of if your men's and women's basketball team are both 1 seeds.
And we sat down and we had our staff meeting on Monday, and we mapped out, we took our desk blotters. Yes, I still have an old school desk blotter with the giant calendar on it. And we mapped out when the softball team is going to be at the ACC tournament, baseball hosting regionals, super regionals. And I don't think there's any overlap.
Nope.
So I was thinking about it this morning. I mean, in the old days of Tech Sideline or Hokie Central or whatever, you'd get through spring football and that was it. There was nothing to talk about. And we're going to be really busy for the next month covering baseball and softball. And it's great. It keeps the fans engaged. Nobody was, Chip covered softball for us last year and did a good job, but people weren't really locked in until they won their regional and then won the first game of their super regional. And then
I think that game
really
against UCLA really sparked interest.
And I talk about this all the time, that fan interest in a sport can go like this because of one thing that happens, and winning that first game against UCLA is a good example.
Yep, I think that was the spark. You lose the super regional, but just winning that first game and getting out and being 1 game away from the Women's College World Series, I think got everybody locked in on this season.
When you think this year, Tech is probably going to end up hosting a super regional.
Yeah.
There's going to probably be a super regional at Tech Softball Park. They don't have to travel. They don't have to fly all across the country and go to Tempe and then go to LA. They can just sit at home in Blacksburg, and
Keeley doesn't have to pitch every day.
Yep.
Yeah.
The road to Oklahoma City runs through Blacksburg.
Yeah. And I know Chip's in the live chat on the YouTube stream, and I'm thinking somebody on the message board says the bleachers for outside the fence have already been ordered for regionals and super regionals. So if Chip can verify that, he'd probably know that.
Well, before they can get to the NCAA tournament, ACC tournament coming up next week, Hokies will be the number 1 seed. They'll play the winner of the 8-9 game next Thursday, 11 a.m. first pitch, so an early one.
Yeah, so very important. The softball championship starts on Wednesday, but Tech doesn't play till Thursday.
Yes.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, every game's on the ACC network.
Until the championship. So
Yep,
championship,
which is on
I think,
ESPN
is ESPN
2, I
2.
think.
Yes. So, and all the games, it's like being the 1 seed at the men's ACC tournament in men's or women's basketball. You play early games. So they'd play 11 a.m. on Thursday, 1 p.m. on Friday, 1 p.m. on Saturday if they keep on winning. So,
They advance.
So 3 games in 3 days for the Hokies to win the ACC tournament title before moving on to the NCAA tournament. But again, last night's win against Liberty, 13-9, called for rain in the 6th inning, I believe.
Yeah.
That's their last regular season game. So now the Hokies just look ahead to the postseason.
One more time, 40-6.
40-6. Unbelievable. And we haven't talked about the Boston College series this weekend. That was a series I think everybody expected the Hokies to go up there and sweep, but they were dominant. The pitching in the circle did not give up a run in the first 17 innings of the series against Boston College. 3-0 win on Friday, 9-0 in 6 innings on Saturday, and then 8-4 win on Sunday.
Just absurd. Again, I know we kind of harp on this every week, but every kind of time we talk about softball, but it is going. I think everybody who hasn't realized it yet is really going to realize how special it is to have somebody else that is, that can pitch as well as Keeley can, that can even out the weight. Because like, I think when Tech gets to the Super Regional this year and hosts it in Blacksburg, and Keeley goes game 1, and then you throw Emma Lemley game 2, and you can win both of those games with 2 different pitchers, and Keeley doesn't have to throw every single pitch of every single game. Like, that's special. And you mentioned it earlier in the season with the Alabama series. Tech's bats weren't really going now. I think Tech's bats have started to get hot a little bit, and I mean, this is a Tech team, like you said. The NCAA tournament, or I guess the College World Series, is going to run through Blacksburg. I mean, Virginia Tech is, I don't think Virginia Tech is a shoo-in, but because nobody really is in a best of 3 kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Virginia Tech has a really, really good shot to, maybe even win the college. You're gonna have to go through Oklahoma, but like, Virginia Tech's gonna be one of the favorites to win it all, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah, you look at Oklahoma, obviously you would think that they're the favorite. I believe they've only lost 1 game all year. But Virginia Tech right there behind them. And again, Hokies number 1 in the RPI right now. The schedule, I think people always look back at Alabama, but they don't look back at that first weekend when they played 5 Power 5 teams.
And won them all.
And maybe a lot of those teams weren't ranked when they played them, but now Kentucky, Northwestern, I want to say Ohio State, a bunch of them.
Ohio State, they played Michigan State.
They're all ranked in the top 15 now, or somewhere around there. So I think that first weekend.
And here's a random thing. I was looking at the somebody linked the RPIs. Chip probably put it on the boards. Florida State is 16-2 against the top 25 of the RPI.
Yep. And Florida State's number 3 in the RPI.
And the 2 are the only 2 they've lost in the top 25 of the RPI were to Virginia Tech. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. And ACC, good conference. You've got Tech at 1, FSU at 3 in the RPI, Oklahoma right in between it too. So
I think Duke's up there in the top 10, and
Clemson is good as well.
Who Tech swept.
Yes.
Keep in mind, Tech swept Clemson. And Tech didn't have a chance to play Duke, I don't think.
Might have a chance coming up next week.
Yeah.
Again, they'll play the winner of the 8-9, the winner of the 4-5 to get to the championship if they keep on winning. So opportunity next week. And then we'll see where they end up. You would assume Tech probably no lower than the 3 overall seed. Hopefully the 2 heading into the tournament, as long as they take care of business next week. Well, I think that about wraps things up. Katie, do we have any good questions from the YouTube chat today?
We do not.
It was pretty dead when I was looking at it.
All right.
So when I was not on the first segment, for those who don't know, I was actually sitting over in the office next door listening, and it's a surreal experience for me to think about, March 12th, 1996, when I was sitting at my computer one night and I typed up my first ever Hokie Central article, and 26 years later, I'm over in the next room just watching this thing I created with people who weren't born, none of them. Well, Chris was born.
Chris was.
Chris was on the first part. He was born.
But the other 4 people in the room weren't.
So it's a lot of fun, and I don't think you mentioned this. This is it for you and Katie for this year. Yep. So this is the last podcast
until
for the spring.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, you have another semester, right,
Yep.
Jake?
I will be here till December.
And Katie, you got a whole nother year.
Yes.
Yeah. So you guys will be involved in the fall, and this is just going to keep plugging in. I've been threatening to do more video content, and all I've done so far is just talk about it. But we're really going to do that next fall, because we've got some students, including Katie, who have pretty open schedules next fall, and so we'll be able to do more stuff. So
Yep, I am only taking 1 class next semester, so I'm free. We'll do a podcast every day.
Man, now you got me thinking. So
Tech Sideline Daily Show.
We'll
seriously.
see.
Well, we
see.
definitely need to do a lot more short form video.
Yeah.
Yes.
We love doing the podcast, but I've been wrapped up with other stuff, with the Justin Mutt's poster and some other NIL stuff. That's what I've been preoccupied with. So we'll try to definitely do more video content next fall. That'll be fun. And so I just want to thank you guys. Thank you guys for your service this year. You've done a great job and really helped us elevate the art of what we do here. So I appreciate you being. So Jake, tell everybody what you're doing this summer.
Well, I'm heading back to St. Cloud, Minnesota. I'll be calling baseball all summer. 68 games in 74 days or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll be up there, and then just like last year, I'll be booking it back to get here in time for classes and football season. So
and so people start in on us pretty much in early August. They're like, when are you going to start doing regular podcasts? And I'm like, well, the talent's not here. Yeah. The talent's still up in Minnesota and New York and wherever the heck else they are. And I mean, you literally you hit the runway and into class you go. That baseball season takes right up until your classes
Yep.
start.
Last year, our team, the Rocks in the Northwoods League, we went to the championship. We lost on a Friday night, and classes started Monday morning.
Yeah.
I had a 19-hour drive in between to get back. So, it's a grind, but it'll be a lot of fun. So excited for that.
And so, Katie, tell us what you're doing this summer.
So being a local, I'm in Blacksburg year-round. So finally, I'm moving somewhere. For the first time this summer, I'll be in Chapel Hill, moving there this weekend, doing some work on Franklin Street, and then hopefully doing some work with Duke basketball, assisting with K Academy and John Shire basketball camps.
So your sister works for Duke, is that right?
Yep, she's the event planner for athletics, like all athletics. So.
Well,
That's
don't get too smitten with being somewhere where they actually have things going on.
I know.
Like concerts and restaurants and things like that.
I've already got a couple concerts lined up.
Yeah,
so.
it's funny because this is completely random, but I ran into Coach Brent Pry at PK's like last week at some point. And I chatted with him for a couple minutes, and he said, you know what? We need more live music.
The whole live music thing is a big deal with him.
Yeah, he loves it.
He loves live music. He's like, man, he's like at Penn State, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, there were like 4 or 5 bands. Like you could go anywhere and get live music. And the only place I can think of that plays live music occasionally is like maybe the Milk Parlor.
Yeah.
Well, it depends upon what he's looking for. Like I got a buddy of mine owns a brewery in Radford, and since he doesn't pay for advertising, I'm not going to tell you the name of it. But they have live music like once a week. But what is Coach Pride looking for? Is he looking for a giant band?
Well, I think what he wants is like
in a bar.
I'm sure what he would love is the Allman Brothers really to come play.
Right.
Well, and you have to remember, before Penn State, he was at Vanderbilt, so there was no shortage of live music in Nashville. Maybe he can like bribe one of the bar.
I think he's
I
think he's from what I understand. I think he's working on it, which is I don't know. That'd be pretty fun.
So Coach Pride's going to bring live music back to Blacksburg.
There you go. Already a good start and he hasn't even touched the field for his first real game yet. Right. So, all right, I think that'll wrap things up here on episode. I'm blanking on the name. 267?
237.
237. I haven't forgotten that all year, and the last one, I mess it up. Before we go, David, what's coming up on techsideline.com?
Honestly, we don't. It's kind of just dependent on baseball and softball. I know Chris, obviously, he said he's got some football stuff coming, and he's going to London on Monday. So Chris is going to be gone for about a week and a half, I think. So it's just going to be Will and I. But
yeah, so let me jump in here and say, whenever he goes on vacation, the Friday Q&A is ask me anything about Tech Sideline. I do.
So that'll be next Friday?
I do an Inside TSL edition once a year, and it's always very well received. It's like, oh, that's great. That's awesome. You should do more of these. And I'm like, see you next year. So just ask me anything about Tech Sideline, and I'll put the call out on the message board and things like that. So that'll be coming next Friday.
That'll be next Friday.
Not this Friday.
Yeah, so
Friday.
Chris is writing some stuff that we're going to put out when he's gone. I'm kind of prepping, assuming Virginia Tech is going to get Basile at some point in the next Basile, yes, at some point in the next week. Besides that, I wrote a recruiting article yesterday you can go check out. Basile was on the list of names, so if he does end up committing, that would cut one name off of the board that they got a list of guys that's still on there.
And now I have to tease David. He accidentally posted it as a free article, so it was supposed to be a subscriber. He put it up as free, so go read it.
Yeah. You get a freebie there from David.
Yeah, but anyway, we've got obviously baseball stuff. Chip Grubb's gonna have some softball stuff in the next couple of days. Chris Hirons will be covering baseball series with Villanova. As good a time as ever to subscribe to Tech Sideline.
Yep.
Yeah, it's amazing that it's, like I said, it's May, and baseball and softball are going to take us through late May.
Potentially through mid-June for
if
baseball.
If the baseball team goes all the way to the College World Series, I mean, we're going to be doing baseball and softball and then take a break and be right back into football.
Yeah. Yeah, what Women's College World Series is the first week of June, I want to say.
Yes.
And then
and that's when baseball regionals are.
Okay, so man, yeah, a lot.
So Virginia Tech, we could potentially be sitting
Close
here
to
first
July.
weekend of June where Virginia Tech baseball is hosting a regional the same weekend that Tech softball is at the College World Series.
So last year when we went on vacation in the Outer Banks, and I'm going to be on vacation in the Outer Banks that when the College World Series the Women's College World Series is going on. And same thing happened last year because that's the week when we go to the Outer Banks, that's the week that we go. And I watched a lot of the softball games, and that was the first time I'd ever watched the Women's College World Series. And it's great. There's a lot of personalities there. The game moves so fast. It's a fun game to watch. So
Yeah.
I'll be on vacation, but I'll be glued to the set watching and working, if they make it that far.
It should be a fun summer. And again, baseball, if they make a run, that's almost July.
Yeah, and you got to think ACC Football Media Days is late July.
It is, yeah. Like
So
I think it was July.
year round.
Yeah. Well, as a business owner, I love that. I'll just say that.
Hey, as long as we don't have another coaching hire this year, I'm all right with that.
There we go.
That took a lot off me. But
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for watching and listening today. Thank everybody on set. Will Stewart, founder and general manager across the way at Will Stewart TSL on Twitter. Chris Coleman was on, our lead analyst and columnist in the first half. You can find him at Chris Coleman TSL on Twitter. David on for the whole show. Just made a little slide over at halftime at The Real D Cunna on Twitter, our managing editor. In the fourth chair, Katie Adams made her return for one time only. She'll be back in the fall and did a great job in the fourth chair. Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes, the best podcast producer in the land, and I'm your host, Jake Lyman, signing off. You're on episode 237 of the Tech Sideline podcast. Have a great weekend, Hokies fans. We'll see you next time.